Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of The Overlay, a poker podcast brought to you by CCG Poker, Chicagoland's #1 live charity poker experience. We're on today again, as always, with Brando. What up, Brando?
What up? Another day, another dollar, baby.
No, well, Bitcoin seems to be going up and down. I got a bunch of text and phone calls from my golf buddies. They're like, oh, my God, Bitcoin hit 100K, da, 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 da. We always have Bitcoin conversations.
And none of you guys really even own any, probably. I love that.
Yeah, no, a little bit.
Some a little bit. Yeah.
Like
I love when the whole group chat goes nuts and it's like, okay, you six don't even own any.
Right.
So shut up.
You don't get the opportunity to be cool. Like, you don't even play poker. I don't want to hear that you final tabled this tournament because you don't even know what that means.
And then Ryan's like, Bitcoin's 110,000. It's like, how much you guys? Like, 0.001. You know.
But it's up to 100K.
Oh, well, yeah, it's 1,000th of one. You know,
you're good. You're oh, I don't do this very often, but I will do it this time. Small. I give it the overlay 2 thumbs up if that's what we're doing. I give it the big blind special. I'm trying to think of a cool, corny nickname to have something, but I give it my approval, the Ken approval.
Yeah, the 2 thumbs up was way better than the big blind special, but keep going. Should have just stopped there.
I was on Netflix, and there's a documentary about the biggest Bitcoin heist of all time. And it happened, I don't know, early on with like one of the Bitcoin exchanges or whatever. I don't remember which one it was, but it was very cool. At the time, they stole like $70 million worth of Bitcoin, but that $70 million in Bitcoin ended up being worth like $4.2 billion. So they were calling it like the $4.2 billion heist. And it was these 2 quirky ass people that did it or went to jail for it or what. I don't want to spoil the documentary. It was very cool because it talked a lot about like Bitcoin and how the people were like following it. And I learned a lot about Bitcoin in general, about like how they stole this 70 million in Bitcoin, but they couldn't actually like get any of it because they had to watch like all of that. The transactions are in the chain. Like, you can't hide that. It was very cool. It was a very cool and very.
No, it's not the Silk Road money, right?
No. This one's called. It's like $4.2 billion heist, Bitcoin heist, greatest heist of all time or something.
Okay, I'll have to watch it. Although, you know, Netflix kicked me off my parents' Netflix, so I got to spend $9.99 a month or whatever. I'm not happy.
Yeah, it's called Biggest Heist Ever on Netflix. And it's wild. And the guy's actually from Chicago. He's like a Chicago suburb kid. Pretty wild. Very good. So if you're into Bitcoin or into heists or both, they were nicknamed the Bitcoin Bonnie and Clyde because it's a couple. It's good. It was worth the hour and 20 minutes that it was, and it was very interesting, and it's a wild ass story. It's wild. Very wild. Anyways, that's my tip for the day for what to watch on Netflix. If you need
the big blind special,
I give it the big blind special.
Jesus,
jeez. I give it a pair of jacks on the Ken rating scale that nobody knows but Ken. And I hate jacks, so that would probably be like the worst rating. Tournament directors nightmares. We're gonna do another tournament director kind of rules episode. Beyond the rule book is what we called it last time, but we haven't done one since September 10th of 2020. Man, we should probably do these like once a year.
Well, especially, I will say, you know, being a tournament director, both of us, kind of, in a small charity poker room, you come up with some of the wildest circumstances that you never even dreamed possible that are not in the rule book, hence the title Beyond the Rule Book. Half of these floor calls are just things that you wouldn't even dream up could possibly happen.
Correct. And for me, it's normally like the situation is so bad and so weird that it's really not in the rule book. And at that point,
you're now
just
making up the best possible thing.
What's
for the
most
game.
Fair thing to do here? And I always kind of let people talk amongst themselves and see if they can work out a solution, kind of like a chip chop before it's forced, right? Like, I want them to come up with their own deal so they feel better about it. And a lot of times, like in cash games, and it's cool. Sometimes you see it and they'll be like, let's just chop the pot. Okay, yeah, I'm cool with that. Is that okay with you? I'm like, hey, it's you guys decide. I'm like, I would much rather you decide a resolution than to me to have to mitigate, to become an arbitrator of this. It's not, there's no like There's no
Right.
case law to this shit. Like, it's nuts. Like, it's like,
Obviously, if there's
how did you
something
get here?
if there's something that's in the rule book that we can enforce and enforce those rules, we'll do that. But I mean, a lot of these are beyond that.
Yeah, pretty wild. Do you want to start with your top one, the small blind chip out?
Yeah, it's nice and easy. It's easy to probably. Easy? It's very easy. I mean, it's easy to explain. I will do a much better job of explaining mine than you will your next two.
Yeah, we better start out with you because the most important time of a podcast is like the first 10 minutes. So we better.
We've already talked about
5.
2 thumbs ups, Bitcoin,
Big
Bonnie and
Clyde.
No.
It's the BB special. That's what I'm calling
the BB special.
It's the BB special.
You know,
well, it's like when you
pocket jacks ranking.
Yeah, it's like when you're closing the action in the big blind, and it's like you're in for $2 and it's like a $12 raise and there's like 6 callers and you have like 6-3 and you call because like that's what it was. I was looking at him like, man, this looks like a 6-3 movie. Like I don't think this is good. And then the flop comes like 6-6-6 or 3-3-3. You're like, boom, got there. That's me checking the nuts. It was very
all right.
good.
Well, our 14 listeners are down to 4. So let me take
sorry.
over here.
Appreciate you 4 for listening. Hey, Mom.
Hey, Richie, what's up? No. So we had a little bit of a rules discrepancy.
Yeah.
Blinds were 100, 200 in a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
There was some limpers coming around, limpity limp.
Okay.
And then it got to the small blind. The small blind had his 1 black chip out there for his $100 small blind.
Right.
And he pulled back the $100 small blind and then flung out a brown 500 chip without saying anything.
Correct. What's the ruling?
Intended on it being
pause the podcast now and then put in your entries on Twitter. Okay, we're back. Brandon, what's the answer?
Okay. So he intended on it being a call, which is the correct answer. Yes. However,
I would have
3 or 4 players at the table
were like, nah, it's a raise.
We're insisting that this is a raise.
And the reason why it's not a raise, again, this is a very particular information. It's a very particular spot. It's the small blind, takes the small blind chip out of the pot and then puts in 1 oversized chip, right?
Correct.
And the ruling on that is, what is the bet? Because he didn't say anything, or she didn't say anything. They didn't say anything.
It's just 200. He fired in 1 oversized chip without saying anything. It falls under the 1 chip rule.
It's a 1 chip rule. You didn't say raise. It's just a call.
Fun fact, if he didn't touch that $100 chip out there and flung a brown chip on top of that $100 chip, intending to make it 600, still a call.
Still a call, because the $100 small blind does not count. It's basically a phantom chip. It's already in the middle of the pot. So you can't throw in an oversized chip to try to make it 600. If you want to make it 600 in that instance, you need to say 600. If you take the black chip out and you throw in an orange chip, intending to make it 1,000, you need to say raise. Now, if you just take it out, say raise, and throw in a 1K chip, now what's the bet?
Yeah, 1,000.
1,000, right. It never fails to me, and I implore players to do this, and nobody ever listens to me. Not that I'm an expert in anything, but for whatever you think you're giving up information-wise by speaking at the poker table, the negative side of what happens in this situation, like obviously he meant to call, so it wasn't a big deal, like it worked out the way it was supposed to. But if he intended to raise, and then like 4 callers, are obviously the big blind checks, now he's got to go 6 ways to a flop with his jacks or whatever it is, and he loses the hand, now he's pissed. Nobody ever gets mad if they win the hand. But if that person would have just said what they wanted, I think whatever information you're giving up or you think you're giving up by saying 1,000, and then it doesn't matter what you put in on the chips. Just say what you want to do. Just say a number. And make it clear. Don't just be like 1. What the hell does 1 mean? Well, obviously it meant 10,000. Well, did it? I don't think it did. I wish people would just say what they want to bet. I feel like so many people get into this idea of like not speaking at the poker table or just like throwing chips in too. I'll get to that in a second. I hate when people just pile chips in. Happens more in a cash game. They just throw a bunch of red chips in, and the dealer has to pick them up, count them out, and then say what the bet is, instead of just like saying 45, and then it doesn't matter how you do it. Like the game moves much faster, and we all want more hands an hour. It bothers me when people do those 2 things. You can add that to my new list of stuff that bothers Ken. Directional bets, min raises, and now not saying whatever you're betting.
Throwing chips
in front of you as like, I'm a cool guy or girl. I don't want to be sexist towards men.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's just like, in order to not leave it up to any interpretation, just say what you're intending.
Just say what you want.
That way, John doesn't have to make an interpretation on what you're trying to do. The floor doesn't have to make an interpretation on what you're trying to do. Well, I was trying to do this. Well, then just say it.
All of that costs time, and in a tournament, time is a resource that we should be using,
for us, not against us.
Right. We should be conserving it.
Poker player.
We should be conserving it because we're all on the clock. It's just, I know I'm getting way off of the small blind thing, but it's
but so now I'll going back to the small blind thing. If that exact same situation happened
on the big blind,
right? Now we're raised to 500 because the big blind's already the going rate of poker.
Mm-hmm.
It's on him. He doesn't need to put any additional more chips in the pot to see the flop because his chips are already out there.
Mm-hmm.
So now by him pulling back chips, he is now has to raise. Because you can never fold your big blind when it's 200 to go and it's on you for nothing. And now you are saying, I don't want it to be 200 anymore. I want it to be more. So you're pulling back to 200. And now if he was to put out one oversized chip, even though it's an oversized chip, still a raise.
It's still 500.
Still 500.
Right. So from the small blind, when you remove the small blind out of the pot, you have two options: call or raise. Right? You really can't fold at that point, could you?
No.
You get two options of your normal three. You can call or you can raise. When you're the big blind and you remove chips from the pot, meaning you take your big blind back into your stack, now you are limited to one option. Your only option is to raise. You do not.
And this is when you're not facing it. And obviously, this is when it's 200 to go still.
100%. It's all limpers. It's just you. Your options at that point are check or raise, and you remove chips out of the pot, meaning you take your two black chips back to make it 1,000. You don't have to say anything. You can just throw in the 1,000 chip, and it's no longer an oversized chip. It's from there. Same thing if you were just to leave your 200 out there and just throw out a chip, the 1K chip. At that point, the bet becomes 1,200. Right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's not like that's, well, why is it in the small blind that you ignore the chip, whereas in the big blind you're not ignoring the chip? Well, it's because he's already made the call. Now he's adding more chips to the pot, and anytime you add more chips to the pot, you are raising.
Ding, ding, ding.
You already got chips out in play on the bet, and the betting comes back to you, and you put more chips in than what is required. You raised.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's a tricky one. Again, I feel like players get into trouble when they're moving shit in and out of the pot without saying anything. Everybody's immediately, it's like red flags go off. They don't know what you're doing, and that's when bad things happen. Maybe the flop comes out, or the dealer isn't aware of the fact that you didn't check, or maybe he thought you were grabbing it and throwing it in rather than grabbing it and pulling it back, and they just rip the flop because they're aggravated that the time's going so slow. Like, it causes problems. If you want to raise, just say the word raise.
Or in that guy's instance, call. I know I only have browns, but I'm going to say
just
call.
Say
so
call.
Everyone knows I called, and then we'll worry about the change.
And then they'll put out like a 5K chip and the 1K chip. Well, I wanted to get changed for my 5K for the flop. And again, I get where you're going at, but it's like, why didn't you just say, every poker player's got three options: fold, check, call. Fold.
Raise.
Hold on, I'll get there. Fold, check, call, or bet. I guess there's four options depending on what it's to you. But just say what you want to do. Call, fold, bet. Just say what it is initially so that we don't have to guess. Because also the nice thing is, if you say call, then the guy next to you can raise or do whatever he's going to do because it doesn't affect the action. Now, if you say raise and I'm the next player to act, I cannot fold yet because I have to wait until you say the number that you're going to raise. So in that case, it's a little bit of an angle that maybe some players don't even know that they're doing, right? Is saying raise and then kind of looking around, seeing like, what can I get here? And if the next three people just fire in their cards, well, now I might change my bet because now there's only one player behind rather than four. Obviously, that's too much information that benefits the bettor at that point. So, anyways,
correct.
Tournament director stuff. What's one of mine?
Let's hear one of yours.
Here we go. Let's try to get this through. Cash game. Player one, let's say player one limps. Okay, $2.
Okay.
Player two raises $15, $20, whatever the case may be. $20. Let's make it easy math. $20. Player three is in the hand deciding what to do. They have not acted yet. It was all folded, so the next player to act is actually player one. Player one goes all in. Snap all in. Brief second, I only had like maybe $80 to the $20 bet, so it wasn't a huge raise by any means.
Well, what happened to player three?
Well, player three has not acted yet. So player one acts out of turn, goes all in, and also flips over their cards.
Okay.
Now we're back to player two. The original person who bet $20 calls the floor, which, again, at any point in any time you're playing poker and you are confused or unsure of what the rule is, the first thing you should do, Brandon, is what?
Call the floor. Ask the dealer to call the floor. I would start with asking the dealer.
You ask the dealer, like, what's the bet? What's the action? Where are we at? And if they seem unsure, then you say, could you please call a floor? Do not yell floor yourself. There's nothing worse than a floor person hears is when somebody else is yelling the floor. It's supposed to be the dealer that calls, but that's semantics. You know, if you're really pissed off and you want to get them there quickly, make yourself heard by yelling floor.
Or if the dealer's trying to fix it themselves when they know they should.
And you're unhappy with it, or you're unsure that the dealer's doing it correctly, ask for help. Say floor. Just do it. It's fine. Nobody's going to be mad at you. Just be kind and courteous, kind of like when you get pulled over, you immediately go in as a jerk, then they're going to want to write you a ticket or not side with you. Try to play both sides a little bit. But anyways, player calls floor. I end up coming over there after the fact. They were explaining this to me later. I wasn't there during the actual call, but they were trying to figure out what to do. And it's like, well, who's the action on? And we end up saying, well, we got to go back to player three, who got skipped in the action. The bet's $20 to you. What do you want to do? Well, what's going to happen with this all in? Well, that depends on what you do, yes. Which players never always understand. It's part of the rule book that I'm not a big fan of, but the rules are the rules. He ends up going, well, I probably would have called the $20. I'm like, so are you calling the $20 or? He's like, well, is that guy going to go all in? I'm like, again, you just got to make your decision. What do you want to do? Do you want to fold, call, or raise? Those are your options. He's like, well, I'm going to fold. Great. All in stands. It's to you, sir. He's like, well, isn't his hand dead? And I was like, no, never in any poker room, home game to Bellagio's Bobby's room. That's what it's called, right? Bobby's room.
Yep.
There's never going to be a dead hand. Now, what happens after the fact, the hand plays out, the floor might talk to the person who prematurely showed their hand and say, hey, this is something we're not going to allow. This is a warning. This is a 5-hand penalty. We might ask you to leave the casino. But for that hand is never going to be a dead hand. Correct?
Correct.
Never in a million years. Is that hand going to be dead? That's just not a thing. And the other player was adamant that that hand should have been mucked, dead. Like that, and his chips stay in the pot. I'm like, that's never happening.
Especially in a cash game. I mean, in a tournament, you might have a little bit more.
But even still, you
still wouldn't have, but you have more.
You're still going to run the cards out, right? It's up to you. You've got all the information. Like, this only benefits you. Like, this is not a bad thing. And he had aces, and whatever. You got kings. Now you know he's got aces. It saves you $60. You should be happy. You should be thanking him for wasting his $60 that you would have called otherwise. If you'd have bet all in, you had kings, you probably would have called. And I don't remember what the hands were, but you know what I mean. Like, clearly, it's not like that hand's ever going to be dead ever.
No.
So dead hand ? No. What else we got for today?
But now here's my next question. Or going back to that really quick, should the tournament director be explaining to that 3-seat like the rule where if he calls the 20, then that guy's action is going to stand?
That's why I was kind of trying to allude to the fact you need to make your decision based on you. You make your decision. The action is to you. It's a $20 bet. It's your action. Well, what about ignore this person? This person is not here. They have not acted. You do whatever
so his fault for not knowing the rules,
I guess, because how else do you do it? Do you explain to them? Well, if you call, his action's going to change. I feel like that might be some kind of inducing action, right?
Well, if he calls, then the guy's action doesn't change.
The guy's action doesn't change. If he raises, if he makes it $80, then the all-in person can decide at that point, what do you want to do? Now, you have all three options: fold, call, or check. Fold or fold, call, or raise. Whatever, you know what I mean. Then they have the full range of they can do whatever they want. They have all of the options available to them. Now, obviously, they only had $80, so it was probably going to be either call or fold at that point. But they could fold, and then they didn't have to put any chips.
Right, because they're only in for $2.
Correct. So, I mean, in that case, 100%, that would have been fine. Which, again, it's one of the rules that all players should know. If there's action out of turn and you want that action to stay the same, then just call. Right? Like, don't or check. Whatever it is. Be like, check. Well, you can't check. Sure, it was this $20 bet to you. Cool. Then I just called his $20 bet. Great. That action stands. What you don't want to do is go, well, I want to make sure the other guy's out of the hand. So I'm going to go all in to kind of isolate between me and this player who's already all in. But what they don't realize is by you going all in first, you have now changed the action to this player who we're giving them the benefit of the doubt. The rule book is giving them the benefit of the doubt that they did not know was not their turn, right? They thought,
yes.
Right, that's what the idea of is the action changed, meaning he assumed that you either folded or called the $20. You didn't raise the $20, which is why he made his decision based on one of those two outcomes. Really, he just forgot you were in the hand. But now if you go all in for $300, $280, whatever it is, $300 or make it $80, well, now the action has changed to that person who went out of turn. They now get to act on their turn as if it were normal. Whereas if you're player number 3 in that instance where you're facing a $20 bet and somebody goes all in prematurely, if you want to be in the hand, just call the $20. Let it play out the way it is. Don't try to isolate. Don't try to change anything. You just got to call the bet so the action doesn't change. Now, if you
the most advantageous person is the one that got skipped.
Correct. And then now
they get to dictate exactly.
I hate putting this out there on the dark web of podcasts, but in all honesty, if you don't really want that player to go in, you do have that option to raise, change the action, and maybe their bet won't stand. Or maybe they'll decide something different. Or maybe they'll go all in for more. Who knows? You could try to do that. But again, you're risking, that person making a different decision. There's a lot of stuff going on there, which, is weird, especially since they exposed their cards.
Right. And now not only
do I know what cards one other player has, I know they're either locked into that bet or I can change that bet by changing my bet or action. It gets weird, which is why this is beyond the rule book. There's not, this one is kind of clear cut. It's very simple. But you as the player need to know kind of what to do. And again, full well knowing if the action changes to the person who went prematurely, then they're going to get to redo the bet. They get a mulligan, right?
Yep.
You don't get a mulligan if the action doesn't change, their bet stands. Let's continue it around. So be aware of that as a player. Can we talk about accepted action, and then we'll call it a day on this nightmare of tournament director nightmares. I want to talk about accepted action because this is kind of what it was, but I want to talk about it. We are on the turn. Okay, in a tournament. It goes check.
Probably should be on the flop, not the turn.
Okay, fine. Yeah, it was the flop. You're right. My bad.
Yep.
Flop comes out. Player 1 checks. Player 2, who's on the button, bets 25,000. Okay. Person who checked, their heads up, just the two players. So check, bet 25,000 back to the other person who raises to 180,000, which was 95% of their chips. I think they had another 12,000 or something behind, a very minuscule amount. So they kind of went all in, but didn't go all in. They went a large chunk of chips in the pot. 180K, bam, piles it in there. The other player goes all in. Doesn't say call, says all in. The dealer takes the all in button, puts it in front of the other player who has the original player who went with the 180K bet covered. Not by much, but they did have him covered. So all in. So now it's back to the other player who has to decide to, call or check.
Call off his last 12K.
Right. Now, I don't know if the dealer just assumed he called, which is, I think, what happened. It was just 180, 25, 180, all in. Cool. Right? Maybe he made some kind of noise or something. Dealer rips the turn. Pause for dramatic effect. Bams the river. They also did not take the opportunity to flip over both hands. The one player all in immediately flipped over their hand, knowing the player who had the 12,000 behind had not tabled their card. So again, this could have been prevented if the dealer would have said, okay, I need to see both hands. Well, why would you need to see my hand? I haven't called yet. And then we would have known that the action was bad. But by being quiet and not saying anything, that happened. Turn, river, obviously this all in wins, and then the floor gets called going, well, hey, wait, I didn't call my last 12,000 into the pot. I'm claiming I didn't, whereas everybody else was like, well, no, you said yes, or you said all in, like, and he was like, well, no, I said all in, like, question, like all in? Like I was questioning if he was all in. I didn't go all in. It was one of those like semantics or like, random things. And I think that's kind of what happened. I'm giving the dealer a small benefit here to not just ripping the turn in the river. But then obviously at that point, the cards have all been played out. It's a $12,000 chips remaining into a massive pot.
$400K pot.
Correct. At that point,
I would like to interject and say the wrong thing for the tournament director to do would be to say it's a premature turn in the river and give him a new turn in a new river. Let him finish the action on the flop. Right. Oh, okay, I call the 12K. Let's shuffle in the turn in the river and give it out. That would be incorrect.
Massively unjust to the game. And the
Correct.
reason why that is a rule that you had stated called
accepted action. Yes,
it's accepted action. You clearly.
We've accepted that all the chips are going in, even the 12,000 I didn't call.
And you let the turn and the river come out, which is why I made sure I said dramatic pause. Like, you had ample amount of time to stop this. You could have stopped. I mean, 1, you saw the all-in button. 2, you saw the player's cards. 3, you saw the turn. 4, you saw the dramatic pause. 6, you see the river. And at that point, you go, and the guy's got like Broadway or something. Like, he flopped Broadway. Whatever it was. He had a massive hand. I mean, clearly.
Right, angling to get your 12.
Clearly he had, he just didn't want to be out of the tournament. And I don't know if it was clear. Maybe, we'll give that person the idea of like, well, no, I actually didn't. I got skipped. But in that instance, I always tell people you cannot let it get that far and then go, well, whoa.
And then not like the result.
I don't like the result, right? Like if and I think he had flopped a set. So let's say the board paired on the river or the turn, and then you're like, cool, full house. So you just rolled it over and assumed that you were all in and go from there, which is kind of this idea of assumed action, especially when you're talking about you got 192,000, you put 180,000 in, you see an all in button, you let the turn in the river come out, you didn't say anything until the hand was over, and then you go, well, wait, I didn't call my 12,000. At that point, you're like,
yep, it's been accepted. It's accepted by the guy that's all in that he's going to have to pay the extra 12K if he loses
and be out of the tournament if you lose, correct. Which he did, which I mildly felt bad about because it is unfortunate, and maybe that person didn't know, or maybe it just went fast and it was thing. I think he bet 180,000. I don't even think he said a number. He just put out like a chunk of blue and had like some orange chips behind. He put out a chunk of blue thinking that covered the other player, which was what most people had said. No, he thought he was going over what he didn't realize that it was 192 to like 195. Like they were very close in chips.
Sure.
So that was also kind of the accepted action idea. Last one I want to do, and it's really just a rule I want to talk about very quickly. If your head's up, and at what point does the acting out of turn no longer become a factor?
Only the river.
Yeah, that was actually something I was not aware of. I thought when you were heads up on the turn, if you acted out of turn, that action still stands. But that is not the case. In that case, if you act out of turn, we kind of go back to what we talked about at the beginning of the episode, where your skip turn, we kind of rewind the clock here. It's your action. Do you want to check or bet? What do you want to do? Full well knowing that there's this looming bet out there of whatever it is, $1,000, and you can either check or call. Don't just call 1,000, because then again they're going to do so. You really kind of need to go through the semantics of check, and then he bet 1,000. Okay, I call the 1,000, or I raise, or I fold, or whatever the case may be. Kind of decide what you want to do. But now when you get to the river, there's like a subsection of this rule, correct?
Correct.
How does that
on
work?
The river? If you act out of turn, that action just stands.
It stays. What is the reasoning behind that, do you think?
I don't know. I actually hate it. I cannot stand that rule.
Feels like a huge angle that you can do that
like
is...
It's like if I know this guy is on a flush draw, I'm just going to... It bricks the river, and I'm on the button, and I got to wait for him. He can go all in first and then bluff me off because I'm bluffing, or I have nothing as well.
Correct.
But it's like, ha, all in. And now the guy doesn't even get a chance to bluff anymore.
Right.
My action just stands. It's all in.
Yeah, I don't agree with it. I think it's one of the poorer rules. I kind of feel like when action's out of turn, it should kind of be like the rock. You know, like in a cash game, the rock. When you're the rock and you're just like, you get skipped over. It's like a forced skipped action. So it's like you get to see all the betting done before the flop, and then you're the absolute last person. You're the absolute rock of deciding, all right, well, there's this bet, all in, call, fold, and then you get to finally decide after seeing all of this action. It's like such an information superhighway, and you can go, all right, do you want to, call this all in of 1,200, or you can fold, right? It is like a straddle, the rock, but I think that's a super cool way. I almost feel like the rules could kind of change to that definitively, meaning like if you get skipped, you just straight up get skipped. Your turn kind of just is like a pause. Like your turn is, I hold my turn until I see what everybody else is going to do. And then this guy goes all in, and that's like, all right, well, now we're back to the original $20 better, right? In the hand that I was talking about. It was $20, skip turn, all in for 80. Instead of going back to the guy who got skipped, you just go straight to the guy who bet 20. Be like, you decide what you want to do. Do you want to call the 80? Do you want to go all in? Do you want to do? He's like, well, I'm going to call the 80. Then we go back to the new rock. Do you smell what the rock is cooking? He can decide. Well, I can call 80, or I'll raise, isolate, so it's just me and the dead money. Like, maybe we do that. I kind of feel like that's a much cooler way, and it penalizes the people who are acting out of turn. I feel like there's no penalty for acting out of turn. How many times can you act out of turn before it's a penalty? Or is it even a penalty? Have you ever heard of somebody...
Tournament director discretion.
Yeah, because then it's like, well, I feel like you're actually angling or doing something to cheat.
But you're
rules.
Just doing this on purpose. Yeah.
So I'm gonna give you a whack just out of the fairness of the game. I don't like the way you're acting. You act out of turn again, it's gonna be a 10-hand penalty. But I feel like that would probably happen like at least 3 times. So you kind of get minimum 2. Like one time, it could very well be a mistake. Second time, maybe it's a mistake.
Let's pay some attention, man.
But you got to pay attention. That would be kind of like an unofficial warning, like, don't do that again. And then the third time, I feel like you're getting a penalty. More so than this is an official warning from your tournament director. It is a full-on, like, 5-hand penalty, 10-hand penalty. Like you scale it up right away. So I guess
I like it.
I feel like that's also a thing. Yeah, acting out of turn's bad. I sit in the 1 and the 9 seat a lot. They're my 2 favorite seats to sit in because I kind of like hiding by the dealer. But when you're in the 1 seat, you are very likely to bet out of turn a lot because you can't see the action coming towards you. Whereas when you're in the 9 seat, you get to see all the action coming to you, and then we don't really care what happens on the 1 and the 2 seat because they're after I've acted. So I'll just figure it out later when it gets back to me. Whereas when you're in the 1 seat, you kind of miss the 7, 8, 9 seat bet. And
especially when Brando's in the box.
You got a big dealer. Brando's a big guy.
You ain't seeing anything.
Right. We're not talking about little Mike here who's 120 pounds soaking wet where you can see around him no matter where he is. I mean, this is a movie screen of a dealer blocking you half. Like you can't see past a 5 seat. Sorry.
I mean, at least you can at least see the 6.
But we're gonna see from the 1 seat angle. Let's see how much we can see. But I feel like it kind of goes back to paying attention, right? Like if you pay attention, you got to go from there and plead your case a little bit. Like I didn't see it, and again, that'll work once. It won't work twice. It also happens a lot when people have their headphones on, right? They miss stuff. Like how many times you've seen in a tournament where it's like bet all in, back to the small blind who's in the 1 seat who just flips out his call, his extra $1K to call the $2,000 big blind, and the dealer goes, no, it's an all in of
this guy's all in for 14,000.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know. Well, at that point, your money stays in the pot, right? Like it's
especially now with the addition of the all in buttons. You can't just claim, oh, I didn't see it.
Right.
Oh, well, there's this big old black thing in the middle of the table.
And I never look. If I'm on my phone entrenched in TikTok or Twitter in a tournament, and again, it's my own flaw. I shouldn't do it, but 100%, I've done it before, where I called off like 20% of my chips to an all-in call, and I've got dog ship, and I'm just trying to squeak in the big blind with like 5, 6, 10 jack, no suits, Badoogie hand plus. Can't get it done.
How much TikTok are you going to watch this weekend?
I'm going to watch TikTok every second of every day until the inauguration.
Well, yeah, because it's
gone
the 19th.
Super quick, since this is obviously a tournament director's nightmare, mine particularly.
Your poker play is going to be way better without TikTok.
I am going to be a much better poker player. The problem is they're not actually banning the app where you can't get it. They're going to.
Are you sure? Because that's not what I read.
What I heard very briefly is that they're taking.
Where'd you hear this? TikTok?
Of course. They are taking it down
from the
app stores and the Google Play Store, where you can no longer download it. If it is on your phone, you will be able to use TikTok, but you will not be able to update TikTok, meaning the platform will eventually deteriorate into, no longer being functional because of you not being able to update it.
Yeah, I thought they were just taking it all the way off your phones.
I don't think I didn't know if they could.
They're just disabling the whole app.
I heard now maybe that's true. Maybe it's like a geofencing kind of thing, like they do when you're on the WSOP or the old school poker websites where like you are not in an area that allows poker, so you can't play. But as soon as you get into Vegas and you're sitting in your room in your underwear, you can log on to WSOP and play online. Which when you're in Vegas,
this might be the first a positive reason to move to Canada.
Well, there you go. 51st state coming soon. Hopefully
a lot of TikTok.
Hopefully TikTok stays. If it doesn't, I'm sure that we'll get something, like Truth Social will start doing video platforming. It's what I would do if I was president.
Elon could buy it.
He'll make something happen. Or the rights to the United States. Who knows? It's interesting to talk about social media and how it, can affect people. But
there's a lot of people that have their livelihood on there.
Yeah, I'm thinking it purely as my entertainment. What I like to do. Right. This is a completely selfish look. I am not thinking of. I watched this one guy who's been trying to shoot par from each set of tees. He started at the ladies' tees, went to the senior tees, went to the men's white tees. Now he's on the men's blue tees, which is like the second hardest. And then there's the black championship tees behind him. Still, he's been stuck on the blue tees for 35 days. I've been watching it every day. Poor guy cannot get it done. And it's frustrating for me to watch, but I enjoy it. That's probably why I watch it. But he keeps saying on there, please follow me on Instagram. Make sure you're following me on YouTube so you can find me in case the app goes dark.
Yep.
And, you want to continue. We want you to continue to watch. But again, I like the 90-second quick videos. I do not want to watch a 40-minute golf video.
Your brain can't stay concentrated.
I just don't want to do it. I'm just not interested.
Yeah.
But anyway, since we're hitting this 40-minute podcast, hopefully you've been interested the entire time.
Let's wrap this up.
Let's cut these down to 90-second tidbits. Maybe we can do that. If you're watching us on YouTube, by that I mean if you're listening to the Overlay Poker Podcast on YouTube, we are on YouTube now. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button. We are on the CCG Poker channel, which is the sponsor of the Overlay a Poker Podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at the Overlay Pod or on Instagram. Which again, Brando, what is my 2025 resolution?
To post more on Instagram.
Post more on Instagram
for the Overlay.
Yeah. Well, we actually have an Overlay page now. It's Instagram.com at the Overlay Pod, or just the Overlay Pod if you look it up on in the search bar on the old Instagram. So in case TikTok's gone here when you listen to this episode, make sure you check us out on Instagram or on Twitter. Other than that, thank you as always. Please leave us a kind review on Apple Podcast. It does make a huge difference in our searchability. So if you could just leave a 5-star review, 4-star review. If you're going to leave a 3-star review, just go ahead and rethink it and just hit that 4. Because really, what's the difference between 3 and 4? Not a lot, right?
Right.
If you think it sucks, just give us a 4 as a secret fuck you. That's the secret FU button is the 4-star, because everybody knows, like, clearly they don't like you, but they feel bad for you. So it's like, I'm going to give you 4 stars. So leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Spotify. We are on all of the podcasting platforms. So no matter where you're listening to, even if it's on your desktop at home, Chris, you can still follow us at any other podcasting app. Brando, lead us out of here and say thanks, everybody.
Guys, verbalize your action. It'll make it easier for everybody. That's all I got. Farewell.
Yeah, I'm out. That's my verbal action.
See ya.